Hello and welcome to South Asia Chat, a podcast series brought to you by the Institute of South Asian Studies at the National University of Singapore. I'm Raghaw Khattri, Research Analyst at ISAS, and I will be your host for today's episode. The Government of India has announced that the next nationwide census will be conducted in 2026, and for the first time in over a century, it will include data on caste. To discuss the complexities and the nuances of this issue, we have with us Dr. Rahul Verma. Dr. Verma is an academic visitor to ISAS. He's a fellow at the Center of Policy for Research in New Delhi, and he's also an associate professor of political science at the Law School, Shiv Nadar University, Chennai. Welcome, Dr. Verma.
Thank you so much, Raghav, for having me.
All right, let's just start with a very straightforward question. Dr. Verma, could you help us understand the context and the background behind the caste census?
Okay, so let's start with this. The last caste census or caste was part of the census enumeration in 1931. And when India became independent in 1947, the census after that in 1951 only enumerated caste information of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. And one of the reasons caste enumeration at that time was stopped, thinking that some of these things such as caste and religion create divisions within the society, and we don't need it. However, over a period of time, you realize that caste continues to be an important marker of India's social political life. Caste continues to shape people's life chances. And so there has been from time and again demand to start enumerating caste again as part of census exercise. This gained momentum after implementation of Mandal Commission recommendations in 1989. And then in early 2000s, the momentum actually moved further within the political circles. In fact, in 2010, just before the 2011 census, Law Minister at that time wrote to the Prime Minister saying that we should now start caste enumeration, which the Registrar General of Census actually declined, saying that it would be administrative and logistics nightmare. But by that time, enough political storm was created, especially because at that time Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's government was also supported by several parties who were in favor of caste census. And so the government then decided that instead of caste census or caste enumeration as part of census, they created what was known as socio-economic caste census, data of which was not made public because of multiple complications, including what we have heard from leaked reports, or it's now actually much well known, is that in 1931 census there were some 4,000 plus caste. Somehow in 2011 census it is being said that the categories were 46 lakhs. Right, and so we don't know why this happened, and so that data didn't become public. BJP till that time was ambivalent on the question of caste census, but as you might have seen during the last election, the opposition parties, especially Congress and Rahul Gandhi, raised this question multiple times. And so the options for the ruling BJP was very little, given that lower caste in India constitute a big majority. And so now the government has decided to go ahead with the caste census, a caste enumeration as part of census, which is already delayed, which should have happened in 2021. That's the long history.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for that. And could you also explain how the caste census became an important political mobilization plank during the 2024 election? And interestingly, you also mentioned Rahul Gandhi took up this issue. Why do you think that he in particular took this issue of caste census for his political rebranding, so to say?
Okay, so let's start with this sort of like idea. Should caste be enumerated? To me, yes, given if it shapes life chances in India, and if caste continues to be a reality, then this enumeration is important because it will help in a lot of policy making. Right now, many policies which are aimed to help sort of like bottom half of caste pyramid are largely guess estimates, right? So having more information might be more helpful, but I don't know whether we have thought through what would be the afterlife of once the caste census is conducted. And so I think the reason opposition parties might have used caste census as a mobilization plank. So one, it could be just a sort of like a genuine political belief in this, right? And I don't want to question their motive why they are doing this, but politics on any issue is also born in a moment, right? Think of it, uh, like early 90s or late 1980s, uh, BJP used the religion, right, or Hindu-Muslim axis to sort of like get a greater foothold in Indian society. And this may have been prompted by sort of like the politics which then ruling party under Vishwanath Pratap Singh as Prime Minister in 1989, once Mandal Commission recommendations, part of Mandal Commission recommendations were accepted, uh, caste mobilization and especially mobilization of backward castes became sort of like very very relevant, and we saw a lot of parties in 1980s and 90s rising on the plank of backward caste mobilization. To me, given in last 10 to 15 years, BJP has been able to sort of like mobilize these some of these communities, especially OBCs and Dalits, under their broader Hindutva plank. Opposition might see this as an opportunity to sort of like make a comeback in politics, right? Using the fault line on caste to sort of like get back some of their voters. And so it could, like, I don't want to deny or give space to this genuine desire of political and social change, but it could also be rooted in what sort of like options are available for political parties to mobilize.
Moving on, last year's election you mentioned, the results indicated that several groups from the other backward castes, the OBCs and the SCs, the scheduled castes, some of their communities, they shifted away from the BJP, particularly in the state of Uttar Pradesh. Do you believe that now with the implementation of like a caste census, there could be a possible reversal of this trend in future elections?
Okay, so I think let's take there are two issues, and I think we overplay how they might be connected. Did BJP saw in 2024 some shifts away from it in among backward caste and Dalits, in especially in UP? Yes, that's true. But did it happen because of caste census demand being raised by Congress and opposition parties? I don't know, right? I don't know about the causal logic, because if this was the logic, why didn't it play out in Madhya Pradesh or Bihar, which are the neighboring states, right? There may have been several other factors that may have led to BJP's loss among these voters in northern India, and caste census might have been one additional factor. I think going forward, BJP does realize the potential of this issue, right? If opposition manages to galvanize a section of OBC population on this question, BJP would be in trouble in some states like UP and maybe in Bihar. So they don't want to take any chances. But to say that opposition is definitely going to gain because they raise the issue of caste census is also sort of like being overplayed. Rahul Gandhi tried this sort of like mobilizational plank even before 2024 elections, right? During the 23 assembly elections in Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, this was an important plank. And the Congress party lost all three states. It didn't become an issue in favor of Congress party in elections after 2024, right, in assembly election. So to say that this issue alone can mar the prospects of a party or can sort of like raise prospects of another party would be to overplay its sort of like immediate impact. But there is always a possibility in politics how issues can sort of like gain momentum and salience.
And how do you think the Congress might shape its political strategy around the caste census? And furthermore, as we have discussed before, there are lots of parties in northern India, especially like the Rashtriya Janata Dal, the RJD, the Samajwadi Party, which basically have championed the issues of caste and have played their politics around it. How do you see all of these parties basically playing out their politics in the months and the years to come?
Okay, so BJP as a dominant party in the current sort of like electoral map has tried to take out the steam of this issue, right? Opposition was sort of like mobilizing on this. BJP, after being ambivalent on this question for many years, suddenly said, we are going to do it, and we have always been thinking of doing it, right? And people should know that it was Prime Minister Modi's decision to allow for caste census. It didn't happen previously. Even when it happened in some states like Karnataka by the Congress government, the data of same being wasn't released. So BJP is trying to claim credit, right, on this issue. Who will this issue help is unknown at the moment, and it will depend on how it plays out and whether it plays out or not. And why I'm saying this, while RJD or Samajwadi Party, as you named, like their politics has been based on mobilizing some of these communities, there could also be fracture within backward caste politics, say if caste census happens, right? What would caste census do? It will give us sort of like data on how many people are from particular caste, but hopefully it will also give information on what is their socio-economic condition. Both Samajwadi Party and RJD are largely dependent on, say, Yadavs in these states, right? And Yadavs are dominant backward caste. What we might find out, and we don't know, that like Yadavs have been able to take much more advantage of the OBC reservation than any other group, right? And so it can actually pose problem for these backward caste parties itself, right? So that potential sort of like remains. Now on the question of Congress, I think Congress in last 2 to 3, not 2 to 3, basically 4 or 5 years, I would say, is trying to rebrand itself in many ways, right? Caste wasn't a question on which Congress actively mobilized between 1950 and 1990 or 2000s, right? This is not to say Congress was never engaging in caste politics or caste engineering in ticket allocation and in mobilization, but caste was not like it. That question was basically Congress always dealt with it reluctantly. And now in last 5-7 years, Congress is trying to actively engage with the question of caste. Now, can they succeed? I think it's hard because there is a history and reputation on any issue. Congress is not seen as a party of backward caste or a party of social justice. And we also don't know how would these parties, you name them SP and RJD, both of them are Congress allies, how okay are they going to be Congress party championing their cause, right? And so while Congress would also try to claim credit on this issue that it only happened, or BJP has now basically decided to go ahead with it because the way they sort of like raised the issue and ran a campaign on it. And once the decision was announced, you saw Congress party putting up posters and basically trying to claim credit on this question.
Dr. Verma, as you mentioned, with the caste census, it's likely that there will be significant population variations being revealed amongst the OBC subcastes. How might do you think this intensify demands for sub-categorization of quotas? I mean, that is, like you mentioned, separating dominant OBC groups like the Yadavs from smaller communities. Do you think this could fracture existing political coalitions built around the broader OBC solidarity?
Okay, so I think the genie is out of the bottle, right? It like dice has been cast and many things are in motion. And so as a social scientist, I'm very interested to see how all of this is going to play out. Like a big picture question actually is going to be, is India going to enter into a new phase of identity-based and caste-based mobilization or not? Because not just the question of sub-categorization and quota within quota kind of issues. Now, all of these things are going to be on the table, not just only within the backward caste, meaning OBCs, but it could also be an issue among, say, scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, because a similar question of sub-categorization could be raised there. And the reason why I'm saying it, we didn't discuss it like in last 10 to 15 minutes, but what has happened in past 15 to 20 years in multiple states, state governments have actually sub-categorized quota within both sort of like scheduled caste Dalit communities. As you saw in case of Bihar, there is a national level commission, Justice Rohini Commission, whose main task for last few years was to actually glean through the data and suggest sort of like ways of categorizing the OBC sort of like population who should get how much benefit. And so I think all of this is going to sort of like open up space for different kind of mobilization. There is going to be political jostling. There is going to be sort of like not just renegotiation of sort of like political alliances in terms of which party manages to sort of like stitch alliance with which community. But what we might also see a springing up of some new parties which are going to mobilize a smaller section of the society. And this has already started happening in UP and Bihar for last 15 to 20 years. It's so if you think of Indian politics on the question of caste and identity mobilization as like one phase between 1950 to 1989, the second phase between, say, 1989 to 2011, when SECC was done, I think the third phase in some ways began then, and now we will start seeing sort of like it's like playing out in very different ways. So in UP and Bihar and in Rajasthan, now you see political parties that are sort of like catering to a subsection of, say, Dalits or subsection of OBC. And so that space will open up, but you'll also have to understand that at this moment of time, compared to the 1990s and 2000 when party system was much more fragmented, right now you are also in a dominant party system phase. And so ability of small players to be able to win seats will actually depend on if they can negotiate alliances itself, right? So there is many things can happen, many permutation combinations can sort of like open up in next few years.
All right, and finally, Dr. Verma, what do you think is going to happen with the reservations in the future once the caste census is implemented? Are we going to see a revision in the limits set by the Supreme Court?
Oh, sure. Like, as I said, it is going to, like, there is always a possibility of such political demands being raised. Not just, so think of it. At the moment, where are we on the question of caste quotas and reservation? Scheduled caste and scheduled tribes have quotas in three spheres: government jobs, higher education, and legislatures. OBCs have in two spheres, which is government jobs and then higher education. They don't have quota in politics as such, though there are some states which give them quota in local body elections, panchayats, and other kind of things. Along with this caste census demand, there has been another demand, which is, or multiple demands. One demand has been to extend reservation in private sector, including private universities. And two, there has been demand to basically offset this limit, which has been put by Supreme Court after the Mandal Commission recommendation and Indra Swani judgment, that the cap is at 49.5%, right, which is 22.5% for SCs and STs, so 15% for scheduled caste, 7.5% for STs, and 27% for OBCs. There is going to, like, this demand has already been there. I think even Rahul Gandhi articulated that this sort of like limit needs to be reconsidered, especially because these communities, one, they are much larger than the population, or the quota limit at the moment, and two, especially for SCs and STs, their this share of 15 and 7.5% was set in 1950. In these 75 years, their population share must have gone up, right? And given this, I think there is going to be demand for reconsideration of the entire reservation or affirmative action architecture in India. And I think, just to conclude, it is a good moment and it is a good time to actually think on this question much more comprehensively. If this moment is just going to be used as, because there is political demand for caste census, let's just get it done and get over with it, we are not going to get away of the reality of caste in India, right? This moment actually demands a serious conversation and consideration on, okay, we had this affirmative action architecture for 75 years. What has it served? And what should be the shape of affirmative action architecture going forward for next 25 years or 50 years, right? And if we don't have this conversation, we are going to make a mistake, and that mistake will haunt us again in 10 to 15 years. We will see another set of mobilization, and then so on and so forth.
All right. Thank you so much for the wonderful insights, Dr. Verma.
Thank you, Raghav. Thank you.
You were listening to South Asia Chat. To learn more about our work, please visit us at isas.nus.edu.sg. You can also get updates from our social media platforms. We are on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter.